Okay, welcome everyone to the West Coast Emergency Management Joint Committee. This is our regular meeting, 30th of May 2025. Great to have full turnout, I think, today, and also to have to welcome our guest Dave Gord, Chief Executive of NEMA, with us today. I understand Dave will be talking to us a bit later on in the agenda, but you're working your way around all the joint committees just to get a feel for what's going on out here in the region. So great to have you here today. So with no further ado, we'll get on to agenda item 2, which is confirmation of the minutes of our last meeting held Wednesday, the 20th of February. Is there any matters of correction in those minutes? Now, who'd you like to move them as accurate? Mayor Lash, Chair Haddock. All those in favour? Aye. Against? It's carried unanimously. Thank you. Are there any matters arising out of those? What's not already covered in the agenda?
I'm having technical difficulty.
All right. Give you a hard copy if you want.
Oh, just looking for a plug.
Oh, this one.
Working. Thank you, Cliff. Sorry.
Don't think the matters running, they're all being dealt with, or else they're on the agenda. So we'll move on to that to agenda item 3, which is the West Coast Emergency Management Manager Report. Cindy.
Good morning.
Cindy.
Good morning, everyone. I'll just do a quick few highlights through the report. You'll see in there that we've had, in the last few months, we've had 2 monitoring or activations, one being severe weather and the Greymouth boil water notice. So the severe weather, we did monitoring and some precautionary activation for that, whereas with the Greymouth boil water notice, we supported Grey District Council. The NEMA Resilience Fund, so with the emergency response cases are due end of May, so we're just awaiting the date of when they will be delivered. I'm sure you'll be aware that one is going to Reefton, Hokitika, and the Greymouth one is a multi-habitatal something unit, which is a great big tent as opposed to acacia, as Jo's worked really hard on making her own containers of acacias there. The advanced evacuation planning will be discussed by Henry later on in the agenda. The Resilience Fund application for 4 power operated fuel pumps. This is to enable fuel to come out of fuel stations in the likelihood of the Alpine earthquake. And we're just waiting for that ministerial announcement to make the that public. 3 fuel tanks that were surplus to requirements from Cyclone Gabrielle have been delivered to Westport, Greymouth and Hokitika. And MOUs are just working with those recipients to be able to start putting fuel in there and infuse them in. So that's a really great resource that we've got. And I'll just hand to Claire for a moment to talk about the work program.
Kia ora koutou, everybody. So the work program is attached with updated comments on that to indicate progress underway for the items. There are 2 items that have not yet commenced, and that's 1.5 around mass communication methods, and the other item that has not started is 4.1 around annual coordinator network hui. So those 2 actions are the only items that need to commence. I just want to note as well that this work program will be reviewed at the coordinating executive group meeting coming up in August, and that will take into account a couple of pieces of work that are currently happening. We've got the review of our group plan, which is currently underway, and you'll get an update on that in the agenda as well. So that will have in it a number of objectives and activities that need to flow through into a revised work program. The other 2 things are happening just around confirmation of our resourcing budgets for the next financial year, because that obviously dictates the capacity that the team have around the activities. And the third item is that the work program needs to align and help deliver on each of your levels of service, which are listed in each of your annual plans and LTPs. So those three items in particular will be taken into consideration with a revised work program that will go to KEG in August, and then will flow through the joint committee in the next meeting for approval.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any questions on that report?
Thanks, Cindy and Claire. So I note the work plan was endorsed by the joint committee in November. I'm just concerned around, or question around, this is election year. And it'd be nice to get this work plan, I think, endorsed by this committee, so the
Yes.
incoming one doesn't,
Is it?
doesn't inherit the uncertainty. Might be just more clear for
Yes.
you and your team if it's endorsed prior to the election.
Yes, so the next joint committee is on the 21st of August, so we'll be aiming to have it then to endorse.
Yep. Good. Are there any other questions? Anyone else on Cindy's report or the work plan?
Good, clear report.
Just a comment around the Grammar for water notice. Thanks for your help with all of that. In the preparedness of our community, it really highlighted how ill prepared they all are. I mean, they only had to boil the jug, but it was like mass outrage. But if they weren't prepared for just that, or to, so I guess our messaging, and I know that we're doing a lot of messaging about preparedness, but it was a shock that how ill prepared they were. So if we just sort of keep that in mind, I guess that we need to be keeping on to that in our communities, because if the AFA happens, they are going to not have any water. Like just have a boil and they're going to probably be on their own for some time, and they don't seem to have anything. So a lot of them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to endorse Mayor Gibson's comments there, we've brought this up. It's so important that we keep getting through to the community. They need to be prepared at all times for any event, because like you said, Mayor Gibson, the people forget pretty quickly, and it's important you have a stock of food and that, because if the power goes off, the freezers food will be spoiled within days, and like you say, everyone thinks the water will be available, but the realism is it won't. The creeks will be murky, and you may not get to the nearest creek. So we cannot highlight as this that an event could be just around the corner. We hope not, but it's just that the community need to be continually upgrading their stocks of food and making sure they're self-sufficient. Have a gas bottle and some form of cooking, whether it's your barbecue and spare gas bottles, because and even in the form of generators, petrol generator will run out of petrol within a day or two, So it's really important. I think this emergency management committee is so important to get through this, and I'm really happy with the action plan you've got here. Thank you.
Just in saying that, the targeting like the elderly people, we didn't really hear like they were, they were more prepared. They knew, or they've been through things that, and it wasn't that. And we've been to a few of those groups, and we've spoken to them with you guys as well. But it's targeting. I think it's the young or mid generations, finding where we actually need to get to. But they're harder, I guess, because we're going to elderly groups or places or schools. But it's trying to find, or how we get to the people that really need it.
And you'll see as we come in further in the agenda and the communications plan, we'll be working towards that as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Chair Madrick, did I see you? Yep. Chair Madrick.
Through the chair, 3.4, the AF8 initiatives, I see that the priority routes been completed.
Yes.
I think we've talked about this before, but my question is, how and when will that be communicated to the public about what the priority routes are? There's not much use with that.
Is that captured in the comms paper?
Not for the priority routes, no, but it is something that we could talk about in that. Yeah.
Through the chair, the intention of the priority work project was around working with infrastructure agencies and contractors around a shared understanding about where the focus would be in terms of opening up highways, more so than a communication product for other audiences, including the public. But I think we should take away an action to look at how we are communicating that piece of work to the public, because it hasn't been.
Okay, any other questions on?
Just to support the chair on that one, Henry, is that, you know, how do you quantify the priority routes? Because we don't know what's going to come down where, what bridges are going to be there. So it's got to be a very generalised piece of work that can be transposed onto any of those routes at any given time.
Through the chair, there was a number of workshops across the South Island involving quite a range of contractors and agencies to explore that. So, of course, you know, we all recognise that, particularly with a large event, that, you know, there'll be a number of road closures, but it was quite a good exercise and process to work through in terms of understanding where the key resources were that would be, you know, needed to work on the roads. So perhaps the action is that we should share that piece of work with the committee. And you can see how that was, you know, developed and put together. And it's about preparation and planning and having the conversation beforehand. Obviously, on the day, you know, everyone will just have to do the best that they can with the resources that they have. But to have some early conversations about where we think, you know, the most resilient parts of the road are going to be, and where it's going to make sense in terms of, you know, most of the population here versus here. You know, that's an important conversation to have in the lead up to any event. Happy to share that work with the committee. It's a good piece of work, and work that was also supported from NEMA in terms of funding that project.
It sounds like it's more like that committee level, it's more around understanding that input is there and would be a key part of recovery planning and key part of informing, you know, policy decisions and things in the event of a emergency. And the messaging really is to the community is that there is priority routes and around, you know,
Yes.
the scenario plays out, then the effort would be to get parts open first or whatever for the, you know, for these reasons. But I'm not sure that the level of detail around what bridges aisle for and what mechanisms and that sort of thing is of much value to the community itself. Good to know that work is being done though. And so D4H, you know, that sort of stuff would be loaded into that for decision makers in an event to.
It's currently on GIS. So the team that put that priority routes together has done an overlay on GIS, so it will be available.
All right, thank you. Good discussions around the table. So the recommendation is that we'll receive that the report, the managers report. I'll move that away. Gilson, over. Against, that's carried. Thank you. Okay. Local government election orientation plan.
So I'm looking, if you hopefully you've read through this, looking for some feedback on this orientation plan. This will be the first time we've done one of these with multiple sessions to try and get across new council members, and also if any council members are into the game, just to give a good understanding of the CDM network and expectations and how to deal with public and inquiries and what happens in activations. So really keen to hear if you have any additions or things we need to take out of this. As you are all experienced in that now for 3 years, it would be great to get your feedback. Happy to have that after conversation later, unless you want to discuss it there.
Thanks. I think my only query is around, spread it over 5 sessions. How practical that is in terms of getting everyone together at any time. And whether or not, like, from my experience, a lot of this is more relevant in particular to the mayor and maybe deputy mayors.
Yeah.
Who are most likely going to be interfacing the most with this. And whether that is a bit of an intensive program for the, and again, it's the same, we don't know who gets elected. But
Yeah.
it might need to be more intense or less depending on who ends up back at the table.
So, the actual timings of them, maybe we just do a 1 day or a half day. We might be able to cover this off just in a couple of hours with questions. I think that certainly the media part of it would be something that we actually need to do a good couple of hours on it for the understanding of how to deal with media and how our PIM team briefs the mayor or deputy or anybody that's needing to be talking on their behalf. So yeah, I guess for those that have already done it the last 3 years, it's a lot easier for them. And in some cases, there wouldn't really need to be every single one, especially if someone's already done it before.
Can I just ask, because I haven't stuff here before, but do you have a almost like a collective view, or I know we've talked about the CE's meetings around how the inductions may be brought together and whether or not they're joined up. Do you try and do an agenda that covers like a whole thing, so you're not having multiple meetings that go through and it gets in 1 day? Do you try and do it that way, or has it not worked that way previously?
It's a bit of a mixture.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense, but the reality is it gets hard to, because the trouble is the people who get elected don't know they're elected until they are and haven't got anything in their calendars, and they can't necessarily guarantee they're available to travel. I can take a real grey or whatever for a meeting from a bullet perspective, I guess.
Yeah, I guess
It's a good idea.
I was just thinking though, if we are going to do an induction package, if you like, then would you build in some priority areas that this would be considered as a priority area for those people, particularly if they're ones that are not used to it? Then you have one whole package that everybody does in the region. I don't know. I just wondered if that was a more thoughtful way of getting the things that are really important on the day to the people.
It's definitely a good idea.
I mean, you'd have to decide what you wanted to prioritise to fit that package, but once you've got them captured.
So I think it's quite important that it's done quite early in the piece. The day after election,
Yeah,
the mayor is it. That's something that gets off.
comes pretty critical, time critical.
Mr. Chairman, this has been discussed at CEOs. But nothing has been sort of agreed or landed yet, and a lot of this is determined obviously by the incoming council and councillors and their leadership and what they want to do actually. But it does make sense to me personally, and I think Simon and Joe, we have discussed it. There is a whole bunch of training, not just civil defence emergency management, that needs to be delivered. That's the same for all councillors, whether there's something, it doesn't have to be all councillors from all 4 in the same room at the same time, but at least if there's material that was developed for that induction, then we could just get synergies by sharing that and delivering that in a consistent way. So I think really what should happen here is, if it's okay and you agree, let the CEOs have another discussion on this if that's what suit.
Yeah, I think so. It's quite operational how it's done, is it?
Yeah, I was just going to say, this is a problem right throughout the country. It's interesting that when we brief the incoming minister, we brief him before he's even sworn, because from the time he is sworn, he is responsible. And unlike all of the other business of council, this can happen like this, and you're in the chair. And I would suggest that this is a piece that is prioritised almost over everything else, particularly considering the threat and the hazardscape we've got here on the East Coast, in terms of part of your first induction process. And just, I guess from going through some of these, it's often better to do it collectively, particularly when you get the cross-boundary issues and everything else that you can actually discuss. And the challenge that we have in reality is that the understanding at all officials levels, not just local, but also national, of how the system fits together and what the responsibilities are is pretty woeful. Until people have started to read into it far more objectively.
And I sort of understood, Chair, whereas picking up Daryl's point, I actually think it's our responsibility. It's not councillors and councils to come in, it's our responsibility to set what should be a master set for induction. And the key things that have to be done, and whether we stage it and we do them. And I think that's probably a really useful thinking piece to think, well, you know who the candidates are going to be. Maybe part of that is before they even do that, you have an orientation around this. It's really important. But I'm happy to pick up with Daryl's point. It wants to go back through the Cs, but I do think we should have a collective master set of induction, and then what you do outside of that at a regional Taylor level or a district Taylor level is up to you, but there should be some cool things that are just accepted.
Yeah, I agree, especially from what Dave said as well, it's important. I think session 1 needs to be really given exactly what happens in an event in a state of emergency, because although we all hope there's some continuity going forward with mayors and the likes, elections are funny things, and you might end up with a whole new bunch of people, and it's important that, and there's nothing to say that there's not going to be an event the day after, so I think, session 1 should be getting those people in the top seats to know exactly what the procedures are in the event of emergency, and then follow through. So great to have a plan anyway, somebody that's more.
And I wonder too, just giving my consent to it now, you've got such collective knowledge around the table, and I know it's always a wee bit difficult when you're going through an election cycle in the process, but the knowledge around the table is too good to let go. And maybe if we could use some of that as we go forward, because that might be supportive for people who are new and don't know, because I think it's not been easily won by the South.
Very good point.
Okay.
Mm.
Sure.
I'd just suggest, I think, going to your point around dates in the diary, there's nothing stopping us saying to all, once we have nominations, all candidates, if you're elected, this is the date that and planning it now so that they know if they do get in, they need to make sure they have this date for this induction, and so that it's all
Some structure.
Yeah.
So just to add to that then, would it not be advantageous, because you have that crossover thing on what the expectations of candidates are in their role? So, and that's never been introduced before as far as civil defence goes, so maybe it's the opportune time to actually say what the expectations are with councillors, and mayors, etc., under these conditions, because basically in any civil defence situation, you'll know that, it's yourself, it's your deputy. There might be one or two that say, call us if you need us, but they have no skin in the game.
Good point. So I don't know what it's called, but there's a report that CEs have to prepare pre-election. I wonder if the CEs get their heads together and agree a joint paragraph that goes in there. So anyone who wants to read what they're getting themselves into, that covers off finances and all the rest of it. A paragraph or a section in there around emergency management will be good, so candidates at least know about it. It feels a little bit to me like, pick up on Dave's point, that it almost needs to be the day after the announcement of election result, the mayors at least should be just pulled into a Zoom and just told like a 30-minute Zoom, these are your statutory things. If this happens, this is where you'll get the information, because that could be pretty daunting to at least know that, give them a Remus number or whatever, so that there's at least a basic understanding.
Who does organise that framework, like that whole process? Once you do get elected, there's an expectation that you do get ones, and who organises? Who manages that?
Chief executives.
So that gets done through the chief executive.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think we leave it at chief executive level, but we'll do our feedback.
I mean, it's sensible, and I mean, if you go to any gig, the first thing you learn is emergency. So this just seems common sense, right?
I think got a couple of hours at Mayor's School. And that's about it.
Mayor's School.
At Mayor's School.
the hell?
And now we're not in LGNZ. Probably can't go to Mayor's School.
I'm sure I see people after.
It was a 2 or 3 day. This is Mayor's School. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not sensing any resolution.
Election.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good feedback there, and I think a unified approach, around a toolkit approach is a good idea. So the recommendations, there are to receive the report and note the orientation program presented at the next joint committee in August, so we will get another one anyway. Have you moved? Thank you. Peter, Chair Haddock, seconded Mayor Lash, all those in favour? Any against? Carried, thank you. Yeah. Now we're on to agenda item 5, communication planning overview. Again, Cindy.
Thank you. So at the last joint committee, we were asked about tsunami and what messaging we're doing with that. With this communication plan that's been put together, it's still to go through the councils to combine our messaging to communities, which will include the water that you discussed earlier as well in the preparation messaging. So we do obviously have a lot of focus on preparation for our communities. And you'll see through here, I've actually put in a specific tsunami awareness campaign that we'll work through and do at over time. But also I want something that will repeat regularly as well, so we keep putting it into people's minds as well. We've just had the AF8 roadshow this week throughout our communities, but so there's been a lot of promotions to do with that. We've had the emergency mobile alert last weekend where all your mobiles should have gone off for you. So there's a lot of regular campaigns and promotions that we do all the time. And it's just it's just putting it on paper, and with consultation with councils and their communications team will formalise all that and work with them on campaigns.
Thanks, Cindy. So again, I'll kick off with a question or a suggestion and see if the table agrees. What I think, there's one thing missing out of all of this, and I think what might be useful is a 10th focus area, and that's at least touching on us as an organisation and who has what role, so people understand why they get a bill from the regional council and the rates for emergency management, just to broaden that understanding of, you know, that that's actually a joint agreement with all 3 TAs, and regional council's obligation is to administer and rate for that, I think, because that's in fairness to our colleagues here in your team. You know, we're you know, it's on your rates, it's on your regional rates bill, but you're actually carrying a little bit of the burden for the whole coast. And I think some comms from the organisation about that structure might be useful.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Certainly endorse that. We find but the message is too, it's so important that this work is so important, and having the emergency management team in place is so important, because we never know when we'll have a disaster around the corner. But you know, the realism is the Alpine Fault, you know, is overdue, and I know you see different things in the media that could be a long time out, but it could be tomorrow, it could be another 50 years, but we never know, and it's the unknown factor. So we've got to be prepared, and it's a cost on the community, it's a cost on the ratepayers, but at the end of the day, if it saves one life, it's been money well spent. So it's a small cost on everyone's rate bill, but I just, you know, I think the importance of it is just, you know, not be underestimated. So definitely support you. Yeah.
Mr. Just there was a sort of another sentiment expressed, you know, in your thought there on the 10th item, but and that was sort of the roles and responsibilities. And just to know that I've agreed with Claire and with Dave's team, actually through John, that will bring to the next joint committee a resetting or a re-articulation of, in a paper, of the roles and responsibilities of each organisation and how it all fits together. That's something that is sometimes quite problematic right around the country, actually, and just thought it'd be timely to have that endorsed by this joint committee to then take into the new joint committee post-election. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm just picturing sort of a little bit of an infographic thing, just what is your emergency management rate by? You know, it's the blood risk assessment information that flows through to us, the emergency management officers in each district.
recovery management, all that stuff.
Yeah, training is on, which is a later part of the paper, and there's so many trained people in that role.
Yeah.
It happens, no one doesn't know what to do, yeah.
Great. Okay, well,
Sorry,
Chair Paul.
oh, do you want to go first?
Chair Mandro, sorry.
Yes, through the chair, good work on the tsunami awareness campaign, good progress. Because of course we can't underestimate this one as well. We're a coastal community and risk of tsunami is just too great. So the messaging, how we get that messaging out and right through the whole dynamics of the community is going to be a challenge. But the alignment with the National Tsunami Week, just my question is when is that?
Oh, and I don't remember off the top of my head. It's called a Hukai. I think it's a Hukoi. Yes, sorry. I'm not sure of the actual date, but I think it runs quite close to the shakeout, which happens around October. And a lot of schools get their students together and teach them how to go to a higher ground. So it's something that our team normally go and chat to the schools about. Are you doing this? Do you know where your higher ground is to take your students and things like that? And that's something that we do every year. So there will be a proper written campaign about that, so you can see what's happening there.
Will this campaign also help give some comms to people how to react in the middle of the night?
But we can certainly make it do that, yes.
Because there's just as much risk, isn't there? That's more good striking in the middle of the night rather than daytime.
And it's always more frightening at night.
Exactly.
And that can link in with the preparedness as well, if having a torch beside your bed, so you can move quickly and that too.
I think the messaging around the long strong get gone is really important, because you're not going to get from a local source tsunami, you're not going to get any more kind of warning from NEMA, because it's less than 25 minutes away. So that promoting that long strong get gone is probably your best strategy at the moment.
But it's got to be the next step is get gone to where.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
There's some.
Yeah.
You can always.
I think
You give pre-guidance and then, there's a landslide no one had thought about, and that's actually not the right. So, yeah, I know it's difficult. At least everyone had a wee idea of the vacation options they've got to consider, I guess. Peter.
Just one last comment, just seeing this as a communication plan, just item 2, the strategic fuel tank installations, which is absolutely fabulous having them, but I think it needs to be highlighted in there that that's for emergency priority vehicles, like ambulance and fire engines. It's not just people that pop up in their vehicle and fill the car up. It's going to be for a
On the way to
all those emergency vehicles, so we still got people.
The long it's got to be done.
And that's a good point. And because they're in the 3 different districts, that's where we'll work specifically with the comms team, the district.
Just a point to highlight.
Yeah.
You can't roll up with your life.
No.
Just through the chair, Cindy, do you link up with the council comm team with this, so it fits into the calendars?
It will, yes.
Yeah, that'll go through, won't it?
Yeah. Especially because there'll also be district specific communications as well. So it's better to work with the councils and use the same sharing networks or newspaper articles or anything as well.
May as well maximise internet.
Exactly, yes.
Okay, thank you, Cindy. That recommendation there is just to receive that report. Yeah, Ash, Gibson, all in favour? Any against? Thank you. Okay, capability.
So just wanted to highlight that up until now, we've had 19 training attendees at our training so far this year. That is not individual people, but that is spaces in our training that has been attended. We also had 21 cancellations, and as decided last year, that would come with a fee back to council. So we're just in the process of working through that. We're at the end of our capability fund that we receive from the capability development team at NEMA. So we've got just almost $10,000 left, which will be used in 2 weeks' time for our next lot of training, and that then will be coming into the councils to do the rest of it. I've put the budget in these documents for you as well so that you can see those. And we've got a lot of, which I haven't put in, there's some other new trainings that are coming up our way as well this year. So appreciate the support to be able to have council teams come and attend our trainings. I just wanted to add on to the tsunami one that we talked about in the communications. We're running a rapid deployment exercise in August, and that is putting up our MHU tents and setting up in the middle of fields and things where there's no power, get our power, our Starlinks and everything going, and that is going to be based around evacuation specific communities for a tsunami. So that'll be the start of that kind of awareness and training all our teams as well.
Right. So through the chair, so that'll be little places as well, such as Okarito and.
So what we're going to do is we're just going to focus on specific communities. It's only going to be an hour and a half of the actual exercise, so we can't do the whole area. But what it does is it starts working through initial action plans so that it's like this. If it happens and we've got 5 hours notice, we've got these plans in place. And as we work through, we'll go through the different areas of the West Coast.
It's great. Thank you, Cindy. Great to see so much. I think, keep just acknowledge the CVs who, no doubt have to encourage staff at times to give up their day job to, attend some of these trainings, build their capability into each of their organisations. Doesn't come, easy or cheap.
The chair, but one we've discussed at the CE's meeting is putting this as part of everyone's job description. So it's not an opt out, it's actually you're in, unless there's a really good reason you can't do it. And then just encouraging through comms to our teams that it is always a time challenge.
Thank you, Chair Mather.
Through the chair, I see that our council, Westland District Council's 10 signed up, none turned up, presumably cancelled.
Is that sorry?
Yes.
Does that mean that we now got a $3,000 bill?
Seems like I'm not sure where you're reading.
Page 7.
15?
15.
It's got 10 attendees.
No, it's 10, that's 10, yeah. But you look at the thing,
Oh, I
no,
see.
no one turned up. So the 20.
Oh, so that's the location. So
There's zero.
no, so that's by location. So we don't run a lot of so that's by location of the training, and the actual council attendance is the row below. So this row here is where we've held the training, and that's how many turned up at each location. We don't tend to hold many in Westland because I've had many times I've had to cancel and move at last minute, so we go to Greymouth instead. So, but this middle line is by council, how many have actually trained people in those
Okay,
councils.
okay, that's good.
So we had
Council
10
here.
live bodies that got trained.
Yes,
Correct.
They all had a pulse. Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah, so it's not that they didn't turn up. I haven't stipulated in here who's did not turn up.
Yeah.
I'll do that.
You come and see us.
Exactly,
I
yeah.
think we've got a league table going, pull ahead, double that.
I must say,
Live with a pulse. Yeah, good on.
look, I must say that Janice and the bullet team do incredibly well for the training up. We do have a minimum of 10 people for our training, and they out-train the rest of the councils put together. So we really need to push. Yeah. Yeah, and because they've also had the most recent event too, they're keen to get that under their belts and exactly.
Given this, almost said about the 21 cancellations in that window, I wonder, if the chief executives have got deputies or fill-ins, at a short notice to sort of tend, so that's not a waste of cost, on the rate pays per person. I do know, people do have sickness and bereavements of that there, but it'd be really good to have someone on standby, that could go on a very short notice to save the cost of rate pays for calls at short leave.
Just through the chair, I think, Cindy and the team are pretty reasonable about things that are just unavoidable.
Yes.
So we don't, we try and get everybody to, if it's unavoidable, you guys are pretty reasonable about it.
Oh, exactly. And a lot of them just cancel when we don't know what the reasons are. If somebody does
That's-
it, and we know with medical appointments, they can't avoid it and things like that. A lot of them are cancelled due to work commitments last minute. So we give them the 14 days prior to do that or have somebody replaced. But we'll just discuss that with each council individually. Yeah.
I think though it's good to have this reporting. It creates some visibility because I think, without being too blunt, it is a bit of an accountability statement that each district is committed to this and holding up its thing. So it's good visibility. So with
Chairman, could I just remind everybody, why we're doing this, what we want to be able to do, and all CEs have, put this up as our aspiration of where we want to be is if we have a major event, we want to be able to get in the defined positions that we need in the EFCs and up at the ECC, multiple days, 3 shifts of people. That's where we want to be, and we've got to make sure that we have enough council and external staff and people trained. It's a combination to be able to try and do that, because that's what we're going to try and do on our own for quite a while.
get some depth. Okay, great. So the recommendation is we received a report. There's an update on regional emergency management training, delivery and capability. Remove Mayor Gibson, particular Chair Haddock, all those in favour. Any against? That's carried. You. Right, now we've got the next agenda item is the group plan review update, and we've got Jim joining us on Zoom. Jim, apologies. I'm Mayor Jamie Pine, Chair of Joint Committee. I don't know you, so do you want to give a quick brief around you and the work you're obviously doing on the group plan?
No problems at all. Yeah, kia ora, ko Jim Tetlow Takuinga. I'm an emergency management consultant based up in Northland, but been working with the West Coast group for quite a few years now with Claire and Cindy, supporting this piece of work and also some of the training that's delivered within the region as well. So I've been in emergency management since came out of university, so 23 years with UK and New Zealand, and been involved working at the group level for Bay of Plenty and Hawke's Bay, and been an alternate controller and all sorts. So this is basically my life. I don't really know much else other than emergencies, unfortunately. So no, I'll give you a bit of an overview of the group plan. I know I've presented to this group previously earlier on this year about where we were at the beginning of the year. I'm just going to give you a bit of an update about where we are in the process now. So hopefully all of you are aware that the group plan really is the strategic document that outlines for the group where you want to be in 5 years' time, and how you want to get there. It's the pathway, the road that you'll take to get there. So as part of this process, there's been a lot of consultation that's gone on and workshopping with the team to understand their current work programs, areas that they feel there are gaps in capability that need to be filled, and obviously that last discussion you've had there regarding capability of staff is one of the key areas in that readiness space, but also things like the communications plan, training of communities, involvement of those community initiatives in actually response, and also the arrangements for recovery. So this plan covers off those 4 R's, but also talks to something that Daryl was speaking about earlier around those roles and responsibilities across the CDEM group, who does what, how it's funded, how decisions are made, the role of the joint committee, etc. So in terms of the group plan, where we're at the moment is that we're in a bit of a review process of the draft. And so the draft was provided to the KEG members following our meeting, their meeting in March. And we've recently obviously met with the coordinating executive group to discuss that. And one of the outcomes of that was to do a little bit more workshopping. And the reason for that is there are a lot of activities listed within this document. So there are a series of objectives across the 4 R's of emergency management for where the group would like to be. And there's quite a lot in that at the moment. It was sort of a first draft. Here's everything you could possibly do. And now it's about the refining down to what's actually possible, what's feasible within that time and where the priorities lie. So that plan is with the coordinating executive group at the moment, and there's a desire to meet now, really probably this next month, June, early July, as part of that group to really review that to the point where when it comes to yourselves, as the joint committee, it's had that kind of refinement. So it's not coming with a, well, we're showing you everything. We're showing you what we think is feasible and what's possible. Another important aspect of this update has been the inclusion of Mana Whenua and how that fits into the whole world of emergency management. It's an area really that nationally has been growing quite a lot, particularly in the last 10 years, but more prominently probably in the last 5 years, in terms of how that partnership works and how to make that as effective as we possibly can in supporting Mana Whenua to increase their capability whilst also recognizing the role that they can actually bring to the table and the capability that they actually bring in terms of supporting us to be able to deliver emergency management. So Claire ran, we've had two workshops with Mana Whenua, and Claire ran the last one around about Easter time. And really, outcomes of that meeting were a focus around the operational readiness of iwi and Hapu to be able to support things within the community and the wider community, but also in terms of that preparedness for different hazards at the whānau level and what we can do to support them in order to get their households better prepared. So really, a lot of the work that they're looking for support and developing that partnership is not necessarily around the response side of things, but it's about the readiness for that, about making sure that they've got the appropriate training, skills, and resources in order to be able to fully support and come to the table in that partnership. We have also, as part of this process, we have to cover off a risk assessment and look at the hazards that are within the region and really look at the consequences of those across a range of environments. So we start by looking at the 4 environments, the built, economic, the social, and the natural. But also placing different lenses across those. So looking at how those hazards will affect isolated communities versus our urban areas, but also looking at them with cultural lenses as well, in terms of how they might affect different cultures, different groups within society. To that point, we've been utilising the National Emergency Management Agency Director's Guideline on how to conduct those. And it's quite a big process and quite involved. And it was always understood that really for this round of group plans across New Zealand, it would be very difficult to conduct all 20 plus hazards as a full assessment. So the focus has been to get the main hazards, tsunami, flooding, earthquake, etc., animal disease, human pandemic, those ones that are probably going to be the highest consequence for the West Coast as assessed to the fullest possible ability before the group plan. And then the remainder will be through the life of the group plan. Speaking to that, we also have obviously the previous group plan hazard assessments. And so there's a lot of information already available. This has been about updating with the information that's come out of things like the Alpine Fault projects, things that have come out of things like Hikurangi Subduction Zone, and obviously the learnings from events like Cyclone Gabrielle in recent years. And the Westport flooding certainly has been very useful to understanding sort of those social consequences, economic and built. So that's a process that's kind of is there, and alongside this group plan is a hazard report around those. Ultimately, what we'll be trying to do is to get this document to you before your next meeting, because this next stage of the process is once everybody's at this level, around the tables of the KEG and the Joint Committee, are happy with what's within the document, we then need to put that out to public consultation as you would with long-term plans, etc. And so the process is that KEG will obviously review that, put that to you as Joint Committee to approve. And then once you're happy with that, we'll put that out to the public where they have 30 working days to submit against that. And potentially also we have to have hearings if people would like to be heard on their submissions. So we'll be looking, we're still looking at the dates to do that. Obviously with local body elections coming up, there's a lot of time demands on yourselves and your wider elected officials and obviously the coordinating executive group. So there is probably a discussion to be had around the timings for some of these things. Certainly was working on the same project with Southland last week with their coordinating executive group, and there was a discussion there around delaying because of because of the elections, and the thought there was that actually we keep this moving because the next batch of elected officials will come in, but as you've already mentioned, an emergency can happen at any time. The longer we delay these things for those sorts of things, the less prepared we might be. So we're going to keep that moving. As we say, we'll probably work on that date, and that might be something for you to discuss here around when is going to be the best time for that public consultation to occur in light of those things that are coming up in the next few months. The other aspect to this is that once we've, or as we're conducting that public consultation, National Emergency Management Agency conduct a technical review. So we provide the draft plan to NEMA, and they have a team there who will review it and make sure that it really meets the requirements of the Act, the guide to the national plan, and also to the National Disaster Resilience Strategy. On that point, the National Disaster Resilience Strategy is the most recent document to have been produced, and really speaks to how New Zealand will maintain its resilience and build resilience across 3 core areas. And so they will look at that and make sure that there's nothing missing and that it really is looking to build the resilience of the West Coast. One thing in that space is that we've already submitted a few plans with other groups in terms of technical review, and a lot of the learnings that come out from those technical reviews have already been incorporated into a draft. So hopefully we're starting to knock off some of the more common things before it even gets to the point of that technical review. The hearings will be something that we will require an elected official, probably chair of KEG, and likely a member of the emergency management team. And that will be for the purpose of hearing what people feel about what we're looking to do over the next 5 years. And then there will be a little bit of a deliberations around those, and obviously we'll then decide what gets included, what gets changed. The technical review, same thing. Following that, the final draft is sent to NEMA and it goes to the Minister for review, and Pat will obviously supply the Minister with an overview of the plan and the intentions of the group. And so that will go to the Minister, who will review that and make any suggestions for where they feel potentially it might need to be changed. So we'll be looking later in the year for that process, and that's where that conversation around the elections, the timings comes into place, because at the moment we've got a 25-30 date on the front of the plan. Potentially we can push that 26-31. It's a 5-year cycle if we're pushing back a little bit. But these are some of the discussions we probably still need to have around some of those timings. And I think, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of the plan, we have, as you can see here, some images from the draft. So we are at a point now where it's not just a Word document, it's actually got some design to it. But within this are these proposed objectives and activities. And there are 17 objectives and around about 40, I think 48 or 49 activities across those 17 objectives. Now, noting the size of the team, obviously there are some things that the KEG members are thinking about at the moment, and hopefully we will discuss in the workshop later in June, July. And really those are looking at the resourcing requirements to achieve those. Councils are going through some difficult fiscal times in terms of having to make cost savings. And as with everything, we can't do everything that we'd love to be able to do. So there's certainly a discussion there at the KEG level around what the resources are required in order to be able to do these things. The other aspect to that is the funding arrangements to deliver those. And certainly things like capability development cost a lot, but the availability of that funding is made up of different streams. And as Cindy spoke about, there's things like the National Tertiary Education Fund that can be utilised for that, but that's a limited pool of money. Plus there's money that the councils put in. So, looking at how we deliver some of these community initiatives, utilising things like the Resilience Fund and other funding arrangements to actually be able to deliver this plan. It is aspirational in terms of what we want to achieve. Things can change the plan, like major emergencies can stop you from doing it, but it's about showing an intent for where you want to go. The other aspect they're looking at is really what are the non-negotiables versus the nice to have. And I've seen it described before as you can go to buy a new car, you can buy a Mini, you can buy a BMW, you can buy a Ferrari. And it's what you're willing to buy, what takes the most maintenance, etc. And it's the same with this, really. There are certain things that you always need. You need 4 wheels, you need an engine, you need people to sit, you need a steering wheel. Then there are other things that we can do beyond that are the non, the sort of the nice to haves. And it's about deciding how much of that stuff we've got the ability or capability to be able to do. So these are the things that we're asking KEG members at the moment to consider before that next workshop. In terms of the arrangements of the CDEM group, it's also important to note that the structure is reconfirmed in this. So how it works in terms of the local delivery, regional coordination model versus also the way that the committees work, the coordinating executive group, the joint committee, but also your subcommittees, things like Lifeline Advisory, welfare coordination groups, how those actually work to put together towards these committees. And then the final aspect that's just being confirmed at the moment is really the structure and design of the document. One of the key pieces of feedback we've received in other areas is the public being able to see themselves in this document. It can become very much an emergency management document that we'll all enjoy to read, but the public cannot see themselves in it, cannot understand it, and does not see the way that they fit into that. So there's a certain discussion to be had around how do we make this really of value to people where they could pick this up and say, as my household, this means something. And so we've added in some elements into this around personal preparedness. And so each section will talk about what the public can do, not just what the CDEM group does. And I think the final point I just wanted to make about this is that this plan is not just about Claire and the team. It's not just about her group of staff to deliver this. This is the responsibility of the CDEM group, and the CDEM group is made up of all of the councils and all of the member agencies. So this doesn't just dictate what Claire will do. They have a work program to show how they will do this each year to make this 5-year happen, but it's very important for the councils and our wider organisations, police, fire, health, etc., to understand they have a part to play in this, and this speaks to them as well about how they form part of that CDEM group. So happy to take any questions on that. We are progressing, but there's the feeling that we don't want to rush this and end up with something that's unworkable. So it's probably better to just take that time, see what's happening, obviously, with the reforms within the sector as well, before trying to nail it down as the finished article. So happy to take any comments or questions.
Thanks, Jim. Very good presentation. So I'll probably pick up on the last point first. In terms of the changes the minister's planning, I mean, that's some way off. It's what wants to chip in, I don't know, around yeah, what are the implications of that? It feels like they're a bit too far away to influence this.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, you've had that piece there on submissions to the new legislation, and that gives a bit of an indication of where things might be going. What we've done with terms of trying to future-proof this is to make sure that those elements within the NDRS, the National Disaster Resilience Strategy, are covered off, so that we are covering off all those bases. I don't foresee that the legislation will change dramatically what's within this group plan, and the process of going through that, we'll probably be starting to look at the review of the group plan anyway, by the time we've really got those things embedded and things like the national plan updated and the guide too. But what we've done is as much as we could, we've gone through the previous legislation that was put to the House with the last government and looked at potential changes and how we make sure we cut those off. And we've looked through this latest submission to make sure we've got those. The NEMA technical review as well will help us understand potentially where there might be gaps too. So we're, as much as we can, without knowing what the future looks like, we're trying to predict a little bit the future to make sure we don't, it's minor amendments going forward rather than wholesale changes.
Right, thank you. Any other questions?
Just a comment for me, Mr. Chairman. I was just mindful of Jim's advice around, you know, this committee's requirements and decisions around consultation and meeting and all those sorts of things. And again, you know, spill over to the Chief Executive, also our next meeting, which is next Tuesday, because that's all leading up to October. And then the other thing running through my mind is our One Plan commitments through another joint committee, which is pretty much at the same time, plus all the other things that are happening. So I think we need to do a pretty good look at the diaries and just see how all this fits. Thanks.
I'm hearing what you're saying, but I think this isn't something we should.
I'm not suggesting that. I just know we just need to coordinate and plan it.
And I feel quite comfortable that this one is one we could take right up to the wire, because it feels quite non-political. Doesn't really matter who's in our roles, who's in our positions. This is statutory, and I feel like it's quite a legacy that this table would leave, actually, that we've achieved that and refreshed all of that, and you know, whatever happens post-election, I'd like to see us push it through, get it through those steps before we
agree.
Based on election, and if that's right up till late September or whatever, then that's what it is.
So as meso, our position, our statutory obligations for representation actually doesn't fall till what point, Cleo?
October 6th.
The actual election day?
The elections are
11th. I mean, as far as if you've got an emergency situation, at what stage do we have no obligation or no input or whatever?
Yeah, through the chair, I understand the question, but I don't have the answer.
Yeah.
So I need to find that out.
I think there's a grey area.
Yeah.
Between the results that are announced and swearing in.
Yeah.
So
And that's
technically,
actually not
the
good
mayor
enough,
would be the
though.
mayor until that actually.
400.
Yeah, but you've got right up to that period of time, or it should be, this is where I think you're on the right track, saying, let's take this right up to the line. Because otherwise you're actually stepping back from a responsibility that you should not be or even contemplating stepping back from.
Do you know the answer, Dave? I'm sure it's actually quite,
Yeah.
quite a niche somewhere, because I read it.
It's not well defined. There is a grey area, particularly if there's a changeover. If the mayor has been re-elected, and that's pretty straightforward. But where there's a new mayor, there is a grey area. It's one of the things we're looking to clarify in terms of that process. And I won't say anything because I don't know off the top of my head that what I say will be absolutely clear and right. But there is a process that goes through that election period, particularly as I say when there's a change in mayor.
We're talking about slightly different things, because in the event of an emergency, I'm pretty sure all of us, no matter who beat us in an election, would be alongside whoever that person would be and support the reality. But this is more of a routine BAU, just an obligation that the committee's had throughout.
Mr. Chairman, can I just say it's even more complex, a bit grey in the regional council, because the regional council has got to elect its chair from the people that were elected onto the council. So that's different again. And that doesn't happen until usually the first, or if there's a contest, could even be second or third meeting of the council before that's all settled. My understanding has always been that until those delegations are in place, especially in the regional councils, that falls to the chief executive to exercise that function until the delegation.
I think you're right, I think that's right. And it's actually about declaration, is that the key issue.
Through the chair, I think that grey area is covered by the minister, that the minister can declare a state or local declaration in those circumstances where there's no one been elected.
Yeah.
Okay, but anyway, in terms of that's slightly a side issue, but in terms of this, I think I'm hearing from the table, Jim, that the work is looking good, but Barrett appetite would be to try and get it finalised and approved this side of the election.
Yeah, and I think we can get it around the table to you before then. So it's, as I say, the next step is the KEG workshop, and once we've got that done, it will pretty much be ready for that public consultation period.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, no other questions for Jim? Right. They're actually it's just noted that Joint Committee have received a presentation from Jim. Lash, those in favour? Okay, that's carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
So the next one, don't think it'll take too long. Is the submission on the Russian document. All right. Yep.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, this is a brief report, really, just to note that we put in the West Coast Emergency Management on the 20th of May to NEMA about our thoughts and views on the discussion document around the new emergency management bill. I attached a copy of that to the meeting papers, and essentially it's a cover letter with 3 pages of our thoughts around a number of the objectives which are set out in the discussion document. And the recommendation is to receive the report and note that the submission was lodged on the 20th of May. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. That's really just formalising a process that fell out of cycle for our meetings. You will meet the Minister in Westport and give him some direct feedback, and that submission formalised that really. So if there are any questions, otherwise. Endorse those two. Okay, we'll move that we receive the report and note that that joint committee submission was lodged. Second, Mayor Gibson. All those in favour? Any against? That's carried. Thank you. Right, now we are on to Henry and Henry Dowler, the Resilient Westport enhanced evacuation planning work. Henry, the floor is yours.
Yeah, kia ora koutou. Thank you, Mayor Jamie. So a few quick things to cover. I assume you've read the paper, but I'll just point out some highlights, which is firstly in relation to the enhanced flood evacuation planning for Westport. We have a draft plan, I would say, that is sort of fundamentally complete and ready to be reviewed by the Buller Catastrophic Planning Group, but just waiting on a couple of inputs to appendices and to also finalise a conversation that's sort of playing out between engineers, catchment and hydrology folk about evacuation triggers, just to make sure we get that all agreed and tidy before going out to others. The aim continues to be to finalise that plan around the end of June, but it may run on a little bit longer than that, depending on the time that we give to the others and other stakeholders to review the plan and provide their feedback. In sort of parallel with that, we have this Resilience Fund project, which is looking at similar plans for Greymouth, Hokitika, Franz Joseph. So we've been sort of doing a rolling review of those draft plans, so they remain in close alignment with what's been prepared for Westport. I understand there's also some sort of local, more focused local work going on that will ultimately feed into those plans. We won't have final plans for those areas by the end of June when the project completes, but that was always known to be the case. And those local folk will continue to develop those and finalise them in their own time. Cindy and Claire might know a little bit more about the next item, which is the purchase of containerised resources, for the alternate emergency operations centre and an evacuation welfare cache. Last I knew, they were being procured. One may have even been delivered by now, but I'll leave Cindy and Claire to confirm that. But certainly imminent, if not already here. There's 3 other projects that we're sort of turning our attention to now as part of the Resilient Westport work program in the civil defence context. The first one I'll mention is one around strengthening data modelling and integration of monitoring data into the D4H tool, which is used to gather and manage information during an emergency response and also supports preparedness activities. We've got a sort of a draft design for this project, but a few conversations yet to play out before we sort of lock that down and look to go out and procure the expertise that would be required to deliver that program, that project. But we expect an 8 or 9 month sort of program of work where we look at things like the D4H tool and the opportunities to integrate with GIS data systems and monitoring data that comes through from hydrology and various others, so that you get really good real-time information that can be projected onto a screen and inform decision making in real time during an emergency. The other 2 projects relate to, I guess, community and business preparedness in relation to evacuation planning. We've been fortunate enough to get Steph Newberry and Amanda South, who are the communication and engagement folk from Resilient Westport, to come on board to help us with the community focused aspect of that, including completion of a survey to test some of the assumptions in the evacuation plan about community preparedness and their support needs. We also have an idea around who we might target to deliver the business continuity program, but again, just in the processes of finalising an RFQ for that, and that will be sent out very shortly. So hopefully both those other projects will get underway within the next few weeks, once we've got the appropriate resources secured. And as you may have noted, there's a couple of sort of draft timelines for those projects were attached to the paper. Happy to take questions.
Thanks, Henry. Claire or Cindy, those cache things, saw some media on that, didn't I?
Yeah, so the caches were the ones that were in the manager's report. So due to be delivered, I am aware that the welfare cache, they're looking at purchasing the bits to go inside the cache. So they're certainly moving along, and I would assume that will be in place before the end of June, I would think.
And so one other question, Henry question, this might be a Claire or Cindy question as well. The elements in these other phases you talked about going to procurement for and the like,
Yes.
are they funded or,
Yes.
or yet to be funded or what?
Yeah, through the chair. So these are all captured in the budget that we had through Resilient Westport. So they're all funded and budgeted for through the project. So there isn't anything new here. This is what our current funding budget incorporates these aspects as well.
Great, thank you. So further to that though, so there was a little bit of additional money from the resilience, from the New Zealand Resilience Fund, that it's going to help roll this out to the other parts of the coast.
Yes, so that's the work that Henry touched on earlier in his report around utilising the evacuation planning work, that template that we have in Westport, and having that copied in a way as appropriate for Grey, Hokitika and friends, and that work's underway. And Henry just noted that the final products that we'll have at the end of June, when this project ends, won't be the complete package. Obviously, this work came in at $45,000, which is considerably less than the budget we had for Resilient Westport, but it helps us get on the right track in terms of that evacuation planning looking similar across those other rivers as well.
And presumably gives a good foundation.
A good foundation
future,
work from.
Resilience funds for finishing that work. Okay, any other questions, councillors, mayors, members?
Good report.
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you, Henry. So the recommendation is we receive a note, the update on the Resilient Westport Emergency Management Project and the related NEMA Resilience Fund Project. Moved Paddock, seconded by myself. All those in favour? Any against? That's carried. Thank you. Okay, we're up to, thanks, Henry. So we're up to the NEMA REMA update from Pat.
I'm just going to hand over to Dave, and he can take the whole spot.
So that was a really easy one. So Pat has a written report, so we'll take that as read, and we will take advantage of the fact we have the big boss of NEMA in the room. So yeah, great to hear from you, Dave.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. And thanks for the invite. I know it wasn't an invite, I just sort of imposed myself into these meetings occasionally just to get a sense of what's going on and what the deal is. All I'll do is I'll just highlight a few things that are becoming very evident, and I'll start with just the work that we do with Australia is really indicative of what's happening here in terms of weather events in particular. And they're starting to just plot the the increase in intensity and frequency of massive events such as the one that we're going through right now in New South Wales. But the impacts that that is having in terms of how they're organising nationally, and also the issues that it creates for communities, particularly in the areas of insurance and so on, is really it's really magnified in terms of what it was previously, and we can expect similar things here in New Zealand as we look forward. And when I talk about insurance, you know, if you're in certain areas in North Sydney or in and along the Brisbane River, you're looking at costs of annual insurance. This is for personal homes of around 25 to 30,000. The consequence of that, of course, is that people aren't insuring. And we can look at similar things around some of our coastal areas in particular. And you know, some of the, and I haven't read into the RMA or the national adaptation plans that have been put forward in detail, or the local government space, but some of those and the interdependency and integration of those looks to address some of these issues that we can face in the future. So it really is challenging looking forward. Just more generally in terms of NEMA, it's a really busy period right now. And as I say to NEMA, but it's more than that, it's in terms of emergency management across the board. The next 12 months in particular will define the next 12 years. When we look at the fact that we've got a new bill, and I do want to say thanks for your submission. I have actually read it. And it's actually really, I like the fact that it's concise, it's to the point, and really does identify what options you prefer. But when you look at the bill, that is due, just some timelines on that. It's going through trawling through the 397 substantial submissions that we've got for submission to government later in June. I don't remember the exact date, but it's towards the end of June, and then into select committee for that continued process of consultation, due to go to cabinet in the end of October, I'll say, with the intent still to introduce it before the end of this current term. The other side of the coin on that is the IMSIT program, the Emergency Management Improvement program, which came off the back of the Sir Jerry Mataparai's inquiry. And that really does look at the resourcing in terms of key areas that will uplift the whole system. And it's not about NEMA, it's about the whole system over a 5 to 10 year period in reality when you consider the fiscal environment that New Zealand's working in at the moment. But it really is a step change, and the Minister intends to make an announcement on the 23rd of June. And that will, I think, just make people sit up and realise that the government has identified the fact that we're not in a good state in terms of being prepared for the next event, and we are going to invest in it. But as I said, it's a tight fiscal environment right now, and government have choices that they need to make. And the other element in terms of, from a NEMA perspective, is the fact that we're actually shifting our host agency, most likely from DMC to DIA. All of them come together in that September-October period. So the team are pretty much under the pump to get this delivered. And you'll see stresses and everything else. And of course, if we have an event, then everything has to be dropped to lean into the bunker. Just a couple of other really straightforward ones, just in relation to the first cab off the rank for the MSIP program. And we think that this, and we hope that this will be actually funded in the out years. 26, 27 is when we're looking at the first funding line coming in. But the first one is the MSOS, or the COF, as people will be more familiar with that term. But along with that, it's a program of work that includes a common operating picture, that includes a review and a renewal of the early warning systems, but greater than what we've currently got, and some of the data and information management issues, and that came up before, and that's part of the challenge across the whole of government, is how do we actually get commonality of data? How do we share it more effectively? And how do we use it more effectively than we currently do? And there is a pillar within the National Adaptation Plan, Pillar 1, which looks specifically at how we actually manage that more effectively. Finally, just in terms of the priorities over the next 12 months beyond that period, that piece there, we've got to get in place phase 2 of the catastrophic plan. That first phase, the book that came out that is publicly available, there's only 4 of the 10 key streams of operation that we need to do. So we're going to develop that further. The national CDM plan needs to be rewritten. There's a bit of a balance in terms of we need the bill and what the impacts of the bill might be on the CDM plan, but it's already well over 5 years, I think, out of date. And we've just been extending it. The only thing I'll say with plans, particularly operational plans like that, is it just gets you to the start line. So in that sense, it's still 80% right, but it needs to be renewed and have a more of a modern look. And the other area, just in terms of between now and the end, is space weather exercise. It'll be our 3rd or 4th one that will be running in November. And if you're not familiar with that, it's worthwhile getting familiar as we go through the next 2 years of solar maximus, as they call it, and the potential effect that may have pretty well on the South Island. If we get what's called a G5 plus event in the South Island, from Christchurch south, and Auckland because of their geology, and the impact that may have if it's a big event on what I call an existential threat, which means that it will change how we relate to our country, to the government, to each other, and to how we see ourselves as Kiwis. The Alpine fault will have a similar effect in terms of particularly the South Island. So those are the areas that we're particularly looking at. But space weather has certainly captured the imagination of many internationally. The United States see it as their ranked 4th in terms of their biggest threats that they will ever have. And now it is a particular vulnerable moment for the sun, I guess, and us. Chair, on that note, happy to take any questions on anything, but
Thank you.
that's us.
So I'll just pick up on the insurance conversation. Obviously, that's an issue that's bearing out at the small already. So one of the work streams that's flowing out, and it's probably not a lot to share yet, but it's flowing out of the Westport master planning work is a relationship we're trying to develop with the insurance sector. And we've got some really good leads there, and so the intent is the next. I've asked for focus to be the next Years and Cheers, where we share that with all of this group, and I think it's relevant to the whole West Coast. So between Insurance Council and IAG and relevant government departments, and obviously we'll be bringing Daryl and the Hazards team in and all of that, and to have a good talk around, master planning and flood defences and what that means for insurance and insurability and things going forward. So that work is front of mind for Westport at the moment, and an important next step for master planning work, which we previously had completed. Any other questions?
Yeah, if I can just comment on that. It's also front of mind for the minister, and for that matter for government. So there's a lot of work being done through the insurance councils, trying to sort of redefine I guess the prosperity model in part, in terms of the fact that what we've got to be able to do is show that we can actually bounce back faster than what we currently do. And when you consider that we spend most of our funding in the recovery side of things as opposed to left with a bang, that's really challenging. We're in the process, which I think we're due to sign it next week or within the next couple of weeks, of signing a memorandum of cooperation between ourselves, the insurance councils, and EQC in terms of how we share data and everything more effectively, again, to recover more effectively than we currently do. But we'll keep you in touch with what how that's actually developed.
Yeah, so the staff that's working on that at our end, yeah, see those discussions are going really well. what I see as the next steps, and I think the next step is to include regional meaningfully in those conversations and then expand it. So I think the presentation will come to yes, Chairs, which is our next meeting, which is all of us. But yeah, I think it's very relevant. Darryl.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. There's a lot happening at a sort of New Zealand system level at the moment, eh? There's all the stuff that your team is doing, so it's all good. You know, just yesterday it's been announced, you know, with the RMA reform package, we've got an MPS for natural hazards, you know, which really dovetails in as well. Yeah, I think and look at that. We've had changes to the regulations for limbs. You know, it's another part of the system here. Building changes as well. And you know, it just seems like everywhere across government departments at the moment, there's a lot of activity, and a lot of these things in their own way add up to the system that I think we're talking about at the moment. Is there any sort of joined up governance or thought that each of those individual components are actually getting us to where we want to be? And are the interface and dependency issues on a separate?
The interdependencies have been identified, certainly within the work we're doing now. In fact, our thinking of discussion paper might have been a favourite that saying these are all of the other initiatives that are going on and changes that are going on across legislation that impact on this bill. And I think there's about 3 of them, right?
Yeah.
It's massive. The intent of why we may shift from DPMC is that from a Prime Minister's perspective, DPMC needs to be able to be across all of that to be able to deliver what the government's priorities are and their work program. And within the emergency management space, the new National Resilience Framework also recognises the requirement for the horizontal integration of all departments and understanding of the effects, the second and third order effects that all of these have. I don't think it's mature yet, and in the interim, this is, you know, going with urgency. I don't think it's mature, but there is certainly a very high level of consciousness of all of this. Now, I don't even have enough hours in the day on reading, and I can imagine it's actually worse at local government level because with all these other inputs that you're expected to do, and it's, you know, looking at across the road here, it's often a challenge and I won't say complaint, but an observation made in the Māori space as well. You know, everybody wants their input. There's only certain resources available, and we all want to do it yesterday. And so yes, we're aware of it, but it's challenging.
Through the chair, this issue with the solar, it's obviously a lot bigger than the West Coast, but it could be pretty apocalyptic, couldn't it, if it affects cell phones, for instance, and internet, and so what? I mean, there's not. I don't imagine that there's anything specifically that we can plan for here, but or is there any contingency that's been rolled out nationally as to how do you cope?
Yeah, I mean, also through the chair, the consequences are the same of any catastrophic event. That some of the challenges from a national perspective is depending on what sort of event it is. You may only have 14 minutes notice where it's going to hit. So who has the decision-making authority and what are the thresholds for turning off the national power grid? When does it come back on? When we talk about business continuity, particularly for government and everything else, and when I talk to utilities companies and other business, we don't talk about a business continuity plan of 2 or 3 days without power, but of weeks, months, maybe for some even years, in terms of if there is damage because we haven't been able to achieve what we need to in terms of protecting the national power grid in particular, because that has effect. The second and third order effects, though, in terms of internationally, things that we tend not to think about in terms of supply chain continuity and everything else, because we think we've got a big effect in New Zealand that's way bigger in the United States or the Northern Hemisphere potentially. And that has an impact on the whole of the globe. So it is, the effects are the same. There is a national space weather plan. We did it in very short order. And we're still getting to grips with understanding some of the issues around, so the effect of, you turn the grid off, and if it's off for 4 hours, then you lose TY point. If you turn the grid off, and it's off for, I can't even remember how many, no, actually, if you turn it off, then you lose, I'm not sure what the percentage is, but let's say it's 20% or so of the gas fields, because you can't get the pressure to turn them back on. You lose them completely. So managing and understanding all of those second and third order effects from a national perspective is really challenging and engaging us, and why we're putting so much effort into it. But a lot of the social consequences in terms of people and communities is the same if we have an alpine fault or a Tarangi or one of the other events.
So it's mind-boggling, that was frightening.
Yeah, it is, and they're available online. There's a lot of stuff online. So
the principal thing is the problem is they have to, my understanding is they have to preemptively shut down the grid at a certain point. And so then, you've got all the social and political aspects around of that, who decided that's what we should do as well. And because you don't necessarily know the impact.
Exactly. And Mr. Chair, if you'll indulge me, when they did it the first time, that was in May 12th. No, well, because it's in Chile at the time. That was the biggest event that they've had. That said, it's only been a G3. And that was when they had all of the auroras. Must have had some stunning ones down here. But they had all the auroras that went all the way up to, almost all the way up to Hamilton. But when that happened, and this is just in terms of how you explain this to the public, the amount of trolling and conspiracy theories that came through on the transition, on the web was phenomenal. And they only shut down part of it, and it didn't have any lasting effect. But the fact that they did it, the fact that they said publicly that they needed to do this to protect the grid, and we've got one of the most resilient grids in the world. The fact that they did that, the conspiracy theories were just incredible.
Claire, just how's this captured in our group plan? Is it, where that's shaping up?
No, I don't. It's a good question. I'm not sure how we reflect national events in the group plan, but I'm sure if Jim was on the screen, he'd have a response, so I can check with him.
Presumably it's more really focused on that area of that, because that'll just be something the power goes off, and so the big, because I think you alluded to, it doesn't matter what puts power off, if it's space weather or it's a fate.
That's how I hold down. Yeah.
Okay.
We had an aurora last night. Just
G1.
Yeah.
It was forecast. There's some great websites if you want to have a look at stuff.
Don't want to fly my algorithm. Okay, any other questions, Dave, we've got on here? In some ways, it's an exciting time for the agency, I think, and that this is getting, you've got a minister, I think, who understands his role quite intricately, and from both an operational point of view from his previous lives, and yet clearly leading in and has good influence in his cabinet peers around making emergency management, a key plank of government. So that's good. Right. And reassure you that your team is very present on the West Coast and supports us, well, various remas, different people in Pat's role over the years, certainly through Westport floods we dealt with, a number of different ones through there, and I'll read that, and always great expertise brought to bear. It's good. Okay, so I guess we'll just move that we've received that update, an email, and Dave Gorn, all those in favour? Aye. Against, that's carried. Thank you. Right, the last thing is general business, and Cindy asked me to raise. Do you want to talk to it or not around meeting times?
Okay, if you want.
So the desire to put to start a little later and end 2 hours slot, 10 to 12 instead of the 9:30 to 11.
So that's just to enable more discussion on the agenda. It's getting to be quite cramped. We're doing so much, it's getting quite cramped at an hour and a half, but also to enable those that are travelling not to have lots of roads too early in the morning. So if you are acceptable, I'd like to propose 10 to 12 as the time.
How does that affect years and chairs? Because we normally, aren't we?
Then choose to start a bit later.
That's what it is.
Well, it's a question for the group, whatever you want to do.
Well, it's really difficult for, and yeah, it's you travelling down or other members changing the Westport from us, so it's how difficult, then, you know, you have got to take into account the shares, and then we will go later. They only get home, so whatever we just want to do.
I think we're half an hour, but not too late because we always have a lot to cover in the next meetings, don't we?
I mean, yeah, I'm the one who travels most often. 9:30 is fine, I think it's up, it's gonna be off. But,
This, I mean, usually they're quicker than this. This is probably one of the few that have gone on a bit. So, but if they're intending to go on like this in the future, then you probably need to consider it. I've usually been short. Well, sometimes we go, can we start now? And we can't because, you know what I mean? Like,
okay, well, let's leave it at 9:30. I'm not hearing any great side, so 9:30, but pretty good, so 11:30, so it's still 2 hours. Yeah, okay, 11 hours it is. Thank you. Okay, anything else anyone wants to read? Oh, okay, with that, I'll close the meeting at 11:12 and thank you all for coming. Just wait.